Hare Krishna. Welcome to Krishna book class number 2. We're going to continue with Krishna's pastimes. Where we last left off, he's spoken to his energy and said to transfer Balaram to Rohini's womb, and then he's going to appear after him. And so Devaki is pregnant with Balaram. And so the prayers, actually, Rohini is pregnant with Balaram, Devaki is pregnant with Krishna, and she had an apparent miscarriage. Balaram has been transferred. And now the demigods know what's up. They're offering prayers. So we're going to start from there. Well, first, we're going to have some kirtan.
Okay, sweet souls, so good to be with you all. In Sangha, please come into a comfortable seat, invite in any movement, roll out your shoulders, open and close your mouth, release your jaw. Let's take a collective breath. Inhale, all that's present, let it space to breathe. Exhale, let it go. One more time, inhale, all that's present. Exhale, let it go, giving our full attention, intention to receiving transcendental knowledge, to being in Sangha and association, and right now, chanting these holy names. Deep breath in. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Bhavebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna Sorry. Shri Shri Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki Jai. Shri Gaura Nitai ki Jai. Arnab Sankirtan ki Jai. Shastra Study Group ki Jai. Bhakti Asanga Beyond ki Jai. Hari Hari Bol.
Om Jnanatimirantasya Jnananjana Shrakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. All right, I was just glancing at the comments in the WhatsApp. Lots of nice comments. There are lots of reflections from the last week's Krishna book reading. So a few things I picked up. There was a lot of devotees appreciating how Vasudev's talking to Kamsa was containing all this knowledge about the body and mind, right? Like how we're not the body and mind, and Kamsa, don't be so afraid of death, and why are you willing to perform these abominable actions just to prevent death? Because you're not going to prevent it anyway. It's inevitable. And so that was one thing that came out. And also just the sweetness. Like a lot of devotees were appreciating how there's just so much sweetness in here. And Prabhupada, went out of his way to pause his other translations to give us this Krishna book. Any other reflections, or any of those reflections that you want to churn before we get into the reading? Things that stood out from our first, kind of read along and discussion on Krishna's pastimes, Krishna book.
I would just say I feel like the bhakti vibes are really high.
Bhakti vibes are really high.
It's really elevated.
Yeah. That sounds like, that does sound like a t-shirt. I like that. I agree. The bhakti vibes are very high. That's Krishna book in a nutshell. I think Julie was maybe talking about how it was interesting how Yoga Maya was involved. That we require the accommodating potency of the Lord. She's like such an important part of his the service, so she's just making such important services happen. And also really cool, I think, is just how all these personalities are showing up. Like Krishna tells Brahma, I want all of you to come because I'm going to be there. So like he's like seeding all these friends and well-wishers and devotees in the material world, in the lower material planets or middle material planets. They're descending from the higher planets. Then Balaram is coming, and Yogamaya is coming, and then he's coming, and all of his eternal associates are coming. It's like a whole thing. The spiritual vibrations are high. Any other comments or reflections?
I was thinking about how near the end of class you said that Devaki became the the resident for absolute truth.
Yeah.
Because Krishna was
she's carrying him.
She's carrying Krishna.
So she became luminous.
Right.
Very beautiful.
And then how in each of our own lives, we're a drop of Krishna and we have super soul within us too. And so in many ways we're each little residents for Krishna.
Yeah.
Of absolute truth. And then so we're tasked and we're tested and we are invited to make the most suitable home for him, and then to also share that truth.
Jai. Yeah, in many ways, the living entity is compared to like a little moving temple, because Krishna's there in the heart with them, with the jiva. So there's a way in which one can appreciate the presence of the Lord in other living entities. And Devaki was a special example of that, because Devaki is such a surrendered devotee that in this Leela, she's going to actually perform a function of being Krishna, one of Krishna's mothers. She's going to give birth to him. And she was so luminous that even Kamsa was like, whoa, okay. This has got to be the onset of the Lord is coming. There's no explanation for this. Even he could tell. His dreaded enemy. Okay.
I
yeah.
was just going to mention, I totally forgot that this analogy, I have a sweet devotee friend that references the two birds on the tree analogy quite a bit. And I forgot that it came from Krishna book. And so I love later in like that second book, how, you know, Prabhupada brings that analogy in for us. So like you kind of commented, like you get the story and then you get some Prabhupada kind of, you know, philosophy, and then we get more story. And I just thought that it's just really cool how he does that. And like the bird on the tree is like the one that like, that is like ingrained into my head. So I loved actually reading the whole story because I have my own version of like what I remember it to be. And then I also loved that when you get into the different prayers, like it's such a great example of how like we could pray, or we should pray, maybe not using the word should, but like an inspiration for how we, like, you know, pray. And then I also love how it goes into all the different names of Krishna in this chapter as well. And I thought that that was just super sweet. And, you know, for, you know, sometimes you hear the name and you're like, what does that one mean again? So, you know, they kind of go through like all the different incarnations and cite all the different names and give kind of the explanation for where the names come from. And again, it's like knowing all these traits and knowing these sweet names help us get to know Krishna even better. So those are kind of two other, you know, things that we didn't get to in class, but like in reading it, I just thought it just definitely jumped out to me. And I'll also say that the reflections from everybody in this class like blew my mind this week. I did not write one. I will be full disclosure. And I was just like, each one I read, I was like, this one's even better. And like, how deep and how thoughtful. And I was just
There's
like,
a lot of them and they were deep.
Holy cow. So well done, class, because I just thought that they were just so beautiful.
Yes. A few things. One, the two birds analogy, it's originally from the Upanishads, actually. It's Dvasa Parnasa Ujasa Kayaha is the Sanskrit. That there's two birds, the analogy of two birds living on a tree together. And one bird is deeply engrossed in eating the fruits on the branch and just like absorbing that. The other bird is at a distance observing. And that's our relationship with Super Soul. We're here like as conditioned souls, we're deeply engaged with the material energy, trying to extract some meaning and some pleasure from it, trying to consider it our own. And Krishna is renounced from that, and he's watching us and witnessing in the heart. That's the analogy given for the relationship between the Jiva Atma and the Paramatma. And Prabhupada, he does kind of insert it in different places, including in this book. The other one was about prayer. The 10th canto has a lot of prayers. It has some very famous prayers. We went through, we really didn't read from them. We passed through the prayers from the demigods. There is a really good kind of like 2 or 3 part class by His Grace Radhika Ramana Prabhu, who is a professor in Utah, I think, and a really sweet devotee. He was like homeschooled by his mom, him and his brother, and they were like super geniuses. They got into college when they were like 16 or something, and they're also really sweet devotees. His legal name is Dr. Ravi Gupta. Anyway, Ravi Gupta, Radhika Ramana Prabhu has a nice series or short series, like weekend series on getting deeper in the prayers, what the form of the prayers, what we can learn from the prayers in the Bhagavatam. And he did like his PhD on Bhagavatam, basically. So if you're interested in that, Kishore, you just remind me, I'll look it up on YouTube and I'll send a link for that, because it's first class stuff and it'll really help you get into, because he talks about how when he was a kid, he's like, oh yeah, I love all this Krishna Leela. Why do we have to have these prayers? They're so like, And then when he grew up, he started to look at it from a more mature bhakti perspective, and he had some really serious realizations. And so I won't go through all of it myself. I'll let him do it, but there's a lot there. Suffice to say, both he and all of our previous acharyas have commented on the importance of these prayers, and they are indications of how we can actually reach out to the Lord, call out to the Lord, the form of the order in which the devotees present certain things. Like, for example, they always start by pointing out that he's the supreme absolute truth above material energy, beyond time. They establish his position before they start expressing their heart's desires and so forth. All right, anything else before we get into the readings? Great, you're eager to hear more. Me too. So this is from the end of chapter 2. Just to wrap up. Devaki was very much afraid of her brother Kamsa because he'd already killed so many of her children. So she's very anxious about Krishna. In Vishnu Purana, it is stated that to pacify Devaki, all the demigods, along with their wives, used to visit her and encourage her not to be afraid that her son would be killed by Kamsa. Krishna, who was within her womb, was to appear not only to diminish the burden of the world, but specifically to protect the interests of the Yadu dynasty, and certainly to protect Devaki and Vasudeva. Thus, all the demigods worship Devaki, the mother of Krishna. After thus worshipping the transcendental form of the Lord, all the demigods, with Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva placed in front, departed for their heavenly abodes. End of chapter 2. Chapter 3. And really don't worry about it. Like, don't feel like you have to follow along. It's not bad to follow along, but I am going to be jumping ahead in places. So if you lose track and you're finding it's difficult to follow the thread of what's being spoken, just follow that, because I'm going to skip paragraphs here and there, and we don't feel like you have to read and hear at the same time if you don't want to. It's not necessary. Yes, the Lord's appearance or birth is not like that of an ordinary man who is forced to accept a material body, according to his past deeds. He appears out of his own sweet pleasure. When the time was mature for the appearance of the Lord, the constellations became very auspicious. The astrological influence of the star known as Rohini was predominant. The star is considered to be very auspicious.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Rohini is also the wife of Vasudeva, and so which came first?
Rohini is a woman's name,
Okay.
and the astrological consideration is of the nakshatras. In Vedic astrology, there are like 27 nakshatras or lunar houses within which, but subdivides the movement of the moon across I think a lunar month or something. I'm not an astrologer, but each one of them is given a name. Those are actually all personified as wives of the moon planet. One of them is Rohini. So you have like I can't remember any other ones right now, but they're all female names. So Rohini has a Sanskrit meaning, and a Sanskritist could tell you about it. So it happens to be the name of Balaram's mother as well. But it's a very auspicious star. So what's happening is all the stars are aligning, literally. According to the astrological conclusion, besides the proper situation of the stars, there are auspicious and inauspicious moments due to the different situations of the different planetary systems. At the time of Krishna's birth, the planetary systems were automatically adjusted so that everything became auspicious. In all directions, east, west, south, north, everywhere, there was an atmosphere of peace and prosperity. There were auspicious stars visible in the sky, and on the surface of the earth there were signs of good fortune. The rivers were flowing full of waters, and lakes were beautifully decorated with lotus flowers. The forests were full with beautiful birds and peacocks. All the birds within the forest began to sing with sweet voices, and the peacocks began to dance, along with their consorts. The wind blew very pleasantly, carrying the aroma of different flowers, and the sensation of bodily touch was very pleasing. At home, the Brahmanas, who were accustomed to offering sacrifices in the fire, found their homes very pleasant for offerings. Due to disturbances created by the demoniac kings, the sacrificial fire had been almost stopped in the houses of Brahmanas, but now they could find the opportunity to start the fire peacefully. The denizens of the Gandharva and Kinnara planets began to sing, and the denizens of Siddhaloka and the planets of the Charanas began to offer prayers in the service of the personality of Godhead. In the heavenly planets, the angels and their wives, along with the Vidyadharas and their wives, began to dance. The great sages and the demigods, being pleased, began to shower flowers. At the seashore, there was a sound of mild waves, and above the sea, there were clouds in the sky, which began to thunder very pleasingly. When things were adjusted like this, Lord Vishnu, who is residing within the heart of every living entity, appeared in the darkness of night as the Supreme Personality of Godhead before Devaki, as one of the demigoddesses. The appearance of Lord Vishnu at that time can be compared to the rising of the full moon over the eastern horizon. Vasudeva saw that wonderful child born as a baby, with 4 hands, holding conch, shell, club, disc, and lotus flower, decorated with the mark of Srivatsa, wearing the jeweled necklace of Kaustuba stone, dressed in yellow silk, appearing dazzling like a bright blackish cloud, wearing a helmet bedecked with the Vaidurya stone, valuable bracelets, earrings, and similar other ornaments all over his body, and beautified by an abundance of hair on his head. Due to the extraordinary features of the child, Vasudeva was struck with wonder. How could a newborn child be so decorated? He could therefore understand that Lord Krishna had now appeared, and he became overpowered by the occasion. Over and over again, Vasudeva glanced at his child and he considered how to celebrate this auspicious moment. Quote, generally, when a male child is born, people observe the occasion with jubilant celebrations, and in my home, although I am imprisoned, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has taken birth. How many millions and millions of times should I be prepared to observe this auspicious ceremony? He was so happy that he wanted to give many thousands of cows in charity to the Brahmanas. According to the Vedic system, whenever there is an auspicious ceremony in the Kshatriya king's palace, out of joy, the king gives many things in charity. Vasudeva wanted to perform a charitable ceremony to celebrate Krishna's appearance. But because he was shackled within the walls of Kamsa's prison, this was not possible. Instead, within his mind, he gave thousands of cows to the Brahmanas. When Vasudeva was convinced that the newborn child was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, he bowed down with folded hands and began to offer him prayers. Vasudeva then began to offer his prayers. My dear Lord, I can understand who you are. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the super soul of all living entities and the absolute truth. You have appeared in your own eternal form, which is directly perceived by us. I understand that because I'm afraid of Kamsa, you have appeared just to deliver me from that fear. You do not belong to this material world. You are the same person who brings about the cosmic manifestation, simply by glancing over material nature. One may argue that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who creates the whole cosmic manifestation simply by his glance, cannot come within the womb of Devaki. To eradicate this argument, Vasudeva said, My dear Lord, it is not a very wonderful thing that you have appeared within the womb of Devaki, because the creation was also made in that way. You were lying in the causal ocean as Mahavishnu, and by your breathing process, innumerable universes came into existence. Then you entered into each of the universes as Garbhotakashaya Vishnu. Then again you expanded yourself as Kshirotakashaya Vishnu and entered into the hearts of all living entities, and even into the atoms. Therefore, your entrance into the womb of Devaki is understandable in the same way. You appear to have entered, but you are simultaneously all-pervading. Whenever there is a material body, it appears that such elements are newly created, but actually the elements are always existing outside of the body. Similarly, although you have appeared as a child in the womb of Devaki, you are also existing outside. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is directly and indirectly existing everywhere. He is outside this material creation, and he is also within it. He is within this material creation not only as Garbhotakashaya Vishnu, he is also within the atom. The existence of the atom is due to his presence. Nothing can be separated from his existence. Therefore, the material manifestation is also a transformation of his potency. Both inert matter and the living force, the soul, are emanations from him. Only the foolish conclude that when the Supreme Lord appears, he accepts the conditions of matter. Even if he appears to have accepted a material body, he is still not subjected to any material condition. Krishna has therefore appeared and defeated all imperfect conclusions about the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vasudeva's prayers continue. As you have said, material nature works under your superintendence, just like a government officer working under the orders of the chief executive. The influence of subordinate activities cannot affect you. Since you are the Supreme Brahman, everything is existing within you. And since all the activities of material nature are controlled by your lordship, none of these activities affect you. My Lord, you are the Supreme Controller, the Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Great, maintaining the order of this cosmic manifestation. Yet in spite of your being the Supreme Controller, you have so kindly appeared in my home. The purpose of your appearance is to kill the followers of the demoniac rulers of the world who are in the dress of royal princes but are actually demons. I'm sure that you will kill all of them and their followers and soldiers. I understand that you appeared in order to kill the uncivilized Kamsa and his followers, but knowing that you were to appear in order to kill him and his followers, he has already killed so many of your predecessors, your elder brothers. Now he is simply awaiting the news of your birth. As soon as he hears about it, he will immediately appear with all kinds of weapons to kill you. After this prayer, Devaki, the mother of Krishna, offered her prayers. She was very frightened because of her brother's atrocities. My dear Lord, your eternal forms like Narayana, Lord Rama, Hayashirsha, Varaha, Nrsimha, Vamana, Baladeva, and millions of similar incarnations emanating from Vishnu are described in the Vedic literature as original. You are original because all your forms as incarnations are outside of this material creation. Your form was existing before this cosmic manifestation was created. Your forms are eternal and all-pervading. They are also self-effulgent, changeless, and uncontaminated by the material qualities. I can understand that you are the Supreme Lord Vishnu. My Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you because you are the director of the unmanifested total energy and the ultimate reservoir of the material nature. My Lord, the whole cosmic manifestation is under the influence of time, beginning from the moment up to the duration of the year. All act under your direction. You are the original director of everything and the reservoir of all potent energies. All the conditioned souls are continually fleeing from one body to another and one planet to another, yet they do not get free from the onslaught of birth and death. But when one of these fearful living entities comes under the shelter of your lotus feet, he can lie down without anxiety of being attacked by formidable death. Therefore, my Lord, I request you to save me from the cruel hands of Kamsa, the son of Ugrasena. I am praying to your lordship to please rescue me from this fearful condition because you are always ready to give protection to your servitors. While thus praying to the Lord for rescue, Mother Devaki nonetheless expressed her motherly affection. Quote, I understand that this transcendental form is generally perceived in meditation by the great sages, but I am still afraid because as soon as Kamsa understands that you've appeared, he might harm you. So I request that for the time being you become invisible to our material eyes. In other words, she requested the Lord to assume the form of an ordinary child. On hearing the prayers of Devaki, the Lord replied, My dear mother, in the millennium of Swayambhuva Manu, my father, Vasudeva, was living as one of the Prajapatis. His name at that time was Sutapa, and you were his wife, named Prishni. At that time, when Lord Brahma was desiring to increase the population, he requested you to generate offspring. You controlled your senses and performed severe austerities. Then, with a steady mind and controlled sex drive, you worshipped me, desiring some wonderful benediction from me. Both of you practiced severe austerities for 12,000 years by the calculation of the demigods. During that time, your mind was always absorbed in me. When you were executing devotional service and always thinking of me in your heart, I was very much pleased with you. O sinless mother, your heart is therefore always pure. At that time also I appeared before you in this form just to fulfill your desire, and I asked you whatever you wanted. At that time you wished to have me born as your son. Although you saw me personally, instead of asking for your complete liberation from material bondage, under the influence of my energy, you asked me to become your son. This is a devotional request. This is pure devotion. They wanted to love and serve Krishna in the mode of parenthood, and they got their wish fulfilled. Prabhupada continues, in other words, to appear in the material world, the Lord selected his mother and father, namely Prishni and Sutapa. Whenever the Lord comes as a human being, he must have a mother and father. So he selected Prishni and Sutapa to be his mother and father perpetually. On account of this, neither Prishni nor Sutapa could ask the Lord for liberation. Liberation is not so important as the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The Lord could have awarded Prishni and Sutapa immediate liberation, but he preferred to keep them within this material world for his different appearances, as will be explained in the following verses. On receiving the benediction from the Lord to become his father and mother, Sutapa and Prishni retired from the activities of austerity and lived as husband and wife in order to beget a child who was the Supreme Lord himself. In due course of time, Prishni became pregnant and gave birth to the child. The Lord spoke to Devaki and Vasudeva.
Recording in progress.
Oh. Recording in progress, okay. The Lord spoke to Devaki and Vasudeva. At that time, my name was Prishni Garpa. In the next millennium, you took your birth as Aditya and Kashyapa, and I became your child of the name Upendra. That's the Vamana Deva incarnation. I gave you the benediction that I would take birth as your son 3 times. First time I was known as Prishnigarpa, born of Prishni and Sutapa. In the next birth, I was Upendra, born of Aditya and Kashyapa. And now for the third time, I am born as Krishna from you, Devaki and Vasudev. I've appeared in this Vishnu form just to convince you that I'm the same Supreme Personality of Godhead again taken birth. I could have appeared just like an ordinary child, but in that way you would not have believed that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has taken birth in your womb. My dear father and mother, you have therefore raised me many times as your child with great affection and love, and I'm therefore very much pleased and obliged to you. I assure you that this time you shall go back home back to Godhead on account of your perfection and your mission. I know you're very concerned about me and afraid of Kamsa. Therefore, I order you to take me to Gokula and exchange me for the daughter who has just been born to Yashoda. Having spoken thus to his father and mother, the Lord turned himself into an ordinary child in their presence and remained silent. Being ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudev prepared to take his son from the delivery room, and exactly at that time a daughter was born to Nanda and Yashoda. She was Yogamaya, the internal potency of the Lord. By the influence of this internal potency, Yogamaya, all the residents of Kamsa's palace, especially the doorkeepers, were overwhelmed with deep sleep. And all the palace doors opened, although they were barred and shackled with iron chains. When Vasudeva was carrying Krishna, the darkness of the night disappeared. All the prison doors automatically opened. At that time, there was thunder in the sky and severe rainfall. While Vasudeva was carrying his son Krishna in the falling rain, Lord Shesha, in the shape of a serpent, spread his hood over the head of Vasudeva so that he would not be hampered by the rainfall. Vasudeva came onto the bank of the Yamuna and saw that the water of the Yamuna was roaring with waves, and the whole span was full of foam. Still, in that furious feature, the river gave passage to Vasudeva to cross, just as the great Indian Ocean gave a path to Lord Rama when he was bridging over the gulf. In this way, Vasudeva crossed the river Yamuna. Can I have the book?
Mhm.
There's art for this moment. So here is Krishna appearing in his forearm form, and then taking the form of a child as Krishna to Devaki and Vasudeva. Here's his father, Vasudeva, holding him, covered by the hoods of Anantashesha. There's little baby Krishna
Oh.
having a chill little time while his father is freaking out. How am I going to get him across the Yamuna safely? Actually, one of the Acharya's comments at one point, Vasudeva drops him. Krishna arranges for this just to increase his anxiety. Oh my God. And then he picks him up from the waters of the Yamuna.
He's so
I don't-
cute.
He's so cute.
Oh my God.
Look how chill he is. He's like not worrying at all.
Yeah.
But his parents are experiencing this transcendental anxiety. On the other side, he went to the palace of Nanda Maharaj, situated in Gokula, where he saw all the cowherd men were fast asleep. Then he took the opportunity to silently enter the house of Yashoda, and without difficulty he exchanged his son for the baby girl newly born there. Then after entering the house very silently and exchanging the boy for the girl, he returned to the prison of Kamsa, and silently put the girl in the lap of Devaki. He again clamped the shackles on himself so that Kamsa could not recognize that so many things had happened. Mother Yashoda understood that a child had been born to her, but because she was very tired from the labor of childbirth, she fell fast asleep. When she awoke, she could not remember whether she had given birth to a male or a female child. End of chapter 3.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In a really simple way, because I know this, I've heard this question answered a few different times, but like in a super simple way. So Krishna's had these other incarnations, and this one is like a few in from the other ones as Krishna. So in the grand scheme of things, if he's appeared as all these other forms, why is Krishna like the focal point for all of us? Like if you had to give like an answer to somebody in a really succinct way.
Like Krishna and not like any of the other forms?
Yeah.
Because Krishna manifests the complete sweetness of the personality of Godhead. In his book, the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Rupa Goswami demonstrates it's quite like philosophical. It's like not an easy read, but the BBT does have a translation of it, and it's pretty good. Gopi Puranadana Prabhu translated it, and anyway, long story short, Rupa Goswami talks about the logic. Prabhupada summarizes it in a variety of places, including the Nectar of Devotion, which we read, wherein he talks about how there are certain qualities the living entities can have, certain qualities that Lord Shiva can have that are beyond any living entity such as ourselves, even up to the level of Lord Brahma. They cannot achieve what Lord Shiva has. Qualities that only the Lord as Vishnu manifests. And there are 4 or 5 qualities that Krishna only manifests. They have to do with his special sweetness, his attractiveness. Krishna, all the forms of the Lord are equal in potency. They're not actually less or more, but he manifests only what's necessary for a certain pastime. So when he comes as Matsya, he's like a fish incarnation. He's saving the Vedas from being drowned, and he's giving shelter to his devotees. Satyavrata Maharaj, I think, and he's got a specific mission, and so he's manifesting certain qualities, and others he's not. It's not that the Matsya avatar is less than Krishna; they're non-different. Brahma Samhita says, Advaitam, Achutam, Anadim, Anantarupam. Advaitam, they're non-different. All these Anantarupa, all these unlimited forms are non-different. Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha. However, although he appears to be, he's the supreme ancient, he's also very young. Navayovanam, he's ever fresh. Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atmapaktau. He's very difficult to find in the Vedas, but he's easy to find in the heart of a devotee. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Pajami. Brahma says, therefore I completely worship this Govinda, the original form, the Adi Purusha. Govinda is basically God at play. Krishna is God at play, not God in the office. He's not manifesting the material world. He's not dealing with our problems and facilitating our whole trip here. He's not even coming and interacting with his devotees as like a yuga avatar on the cosmic calendar. But it's time to come as a yuga avatar, or it's time to come like as Vishnu and oversee the mode of goodness. Krishna is just playing. He's just play. He's just sweetness. So there's a theology there, although they're non-different. That's why we're the Hare Krishnas, but we don't look down on or disregard any of the forms of the Lord. It's just like Krishna's just got so much sweetness. This is Lord Chaitanya's mood. It was Krishna himself. So much more can be said about that because there's a lot of philosophy, and you can quote a lot of verses to establish what the points I just made, but that's basically it.
I was having the same exact question that I asked. Like, so this is his first time appearing as Krishna, but not his first birth.
It's his first time appearing as Krishna to them.
Right.
None of these forms have beginnings or ends.
Mm-hmm.
Even the living entities don't have a beginning or an end.
Mm-hmm.
But Krishna appears in universe after universe. Prabhupada calls it like a traveling roadshow. As his pastimes pass out of existence in one place, just like the sun sets in one place, it rises somewhere else. Right now it's dark here in Vermont, and probably in India or New Zealand or something, it's bright out, same sun, different experience. So the Krishna sun sets in one place, rises somewhere else. Krishna is always having his pastimes, even in the material world, continually, from one place to another. In this material world, he had his pastimes in Vrindavan, not far from us, not long ago, really a blink of an eye ago. But that's not when Krishna was created or manifested or born for the first time. But he has these leelas, and they have beginnings and endings, so that there's drama and play and movement and flow. Mm-hmm. And so from the perspective of his devotee parents, there's a beginning.
Okay. And again, this might be like, I might be like really missing the mark, and it could also be like not in the mood of the book, but I guess I'm just like trying to piece a lot of things together. Like when Krishna was with Arjuna speaking Bhagavad Gita, that's not a Leela, or is it? Like, is that considered?
Everything Krishna does is Leela.
And it's sort of like in the context of when this happened, when
When was that?
Bhagavad Gita happened.
Like 100 years later.
Okay.
Yeah, he's 100 years old at that point, although he still looks like a young man. It's later, significantly later. As we get through, I don't know if we'll ever get to that point because Krishna book is 90 chapters and we're like 2.5 in, 3.5 in. But around chapter 60, 70, that's chronologically around when Bhagavad Gita is spoken.
Okay.
And
Such a trip because then
you'll-
within that, it's within the Mahabharata. It's just like,
yeah,
it just feels like it's so matrixy. I
There's-
don't know how else to describe it.
yeah. So you'll have Krishna, you'll have Arjuna shows up later in the Krishna book.
What's that?
Arjuna will show up and they'll have pastimes together. And the Battle of Kurukshetra is not directly there,
Right.
but you have some consequences of it. For example, when Krishna goes to Simanta Panchaka to purify himself, that's after the battle. He meets the residents of Vrindavan again. It's like chapter 80 something in the Krishna book. That's after the battle's already done. That's why he feels he has to get purified, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
That's adult Krishna.
Okay.
Yeah. Unlimited pastimes.
So I have a jumping off point from that.
Mhm.
I can't remember, but knowing how Krishna appeared in his form to Devaki and Vasudeva, is that the same form that he shows Arjuna when he asks to see his true form, or is that something that because we can't comprehend, it's not
He asks to see his universal form.
universal? Thank you.
And so Krishna manifests his form as the structure of the universe, and it's a trip. Actually, at first he says, you can't see it, so I'll give you divine vision. And then he sees it, and he sees like all the planets and the moon and sun are his eyes, and he's spread across time and space. And I mean, Jimi Hendrix kind of ripped off the idea and put it on one of his covers. You see like that one with Jimmy like kind of expanded all over the place in 35 different forms. That's based on Vishnu art, Krishna art. After he does that, blows Arjuna's mind, Arjuna offers prayers. Then Krishna says, anyway, enough like disturbing your mind. He shows him his forearm form, then he shows him again his two-arm form that he grew up with, the Krishna that he knows and loves. And it's called there in Bhagavad Gita as the Saumya Vapu, the very sweet form. He says that even the demigods are always hankering to see this form, the sweet form of Krishna, relatable, human-like. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta called it medium size. He's very sweet. And so Arjuna asked to see the universal form. And one of the reasons for that is because the human like Krishna, I mean, you can put on a show of pretending to be like, oh, I'm Krishna. But Arjuna says, can I see your universal form? And Krishna shows it. So Prabhupada says this is evidence. Like if somebody claims to be Krishna or God, then they have to do that too. You can't just put a peacock feather in your hair saying, oh, I'm Krishna now because he's human like and so am I. Like, yeah, he had the goods. But his sweet form as Krishna is really what the devotees are interested in.
I have one more question,
Okay.
I hope. And so before Krishna's birth, were people honoring like Vishnu? Like who was like before Krishna was like Krishna, he was here, but if there were no Krishna or Leela, were people like honoring Vishnu, or like who was God to them before his birth as Krishna?
I don't think it's necessarily the case that just because Krishna is born one time that there was no like scriptural evidence or the Brahmanas or devotees weren't aware. I mean,
Right.
like we're always existing at some point in the cycle of Krishna's pastimes. Like right now we're before Krishna appears or we're after he appeared. It depends how you look at it. I mean, he came as Lord Chaitanya too, but the knowledge of the Lord is carried by the devotees. It's carried by scripture. It's carried by those who actually follow scripture. So in the context of Vrindavan, they worship Narayana, they worship Vishnu. I know that. How many of his devotees were aware he was about to take birth as Krishna? We're not sure. we hear like some of the demigods knew it. The sages are praying and throwing flowers in the air when they know that Krishna is about to take birth, seeing the Rohini constellation, everything coming into place. So in the higher planets, the sages and demigods and Gandharvas and Apsaras, angel ladies, and they all have a sense because they're more advanced. And the human beings in the middle planetary system, some devotees may have known. Krishna is eternal. So like being on the cusp of his appearance is like a renewal of something. It's not a creation. It was already there. Chapter 4. Kamsa begins his persecutions. Kamsa was waiting to hear the news of the child's birth, and the gatekeepers immediately approached him and informed him that the child was born. At that time, Kamsa got up from his bed very quickly and exclaimed, "Now the cruel death of my life is born." He's been meditating on this, and the moment has come. Kamsa became perplexed now that his death was approaching, and his hair scattered. Immediately, he proceeded toward the place where the child was born. Devaki, on seeing her brother approaching, prayed in a very meek attitude to Kamsa, "My dear brother, please do not kill this female child. I promise that this child will be the wife of your son. Therefore, don't kill her." She wants to create like a marriage. Like maybe they can marry the cousins so that something to pacify him. You are not to be killed by any female child. The omen was that you were to be killed by a male child, so please do not kill her. My dear brother, you have killed so many of my children who are just born, shining like the sun. That is not your fault. You have been advised by demoniac friends to kill my children, but now I beg you to excuse this girl at least. Let her live as my daughter. Kamsa was so cruel that he did not listen to the pitiful prayers of his sister Devaki. He forcibly grabbed the newborn child to rebuke his sister and attempted to dash her on a stone mercilessly. This is a graphic example of a cruel demon who would sacrifice all relationships for the sake of personal gratification. But the child immediately slipped out of his hands, went up into the sky, and appeared with 8 arms as the younger sister of Vishnu. She was decorated with nice garments and flower garlands, and ornaments. Seeing the appearance of the child, who was actually the goddess Durga, all the demigods from different planets like Siddhaloka, Chandraloka, etc., presented her with various articles and began to offer their respective prayers. Because the daughter that was exchanged took birth from Devaki as Yogamaya. She's the Lord's energy. And so he's interacting with her. So for him, it's Mahamaya, the external energy, because that's where he's at. The goddess addressed Kamsa from above. "You rascal, how can you kill me? The child who will kill you is already born before me somewhere within this world. Don't be so cruel to your poor sister." After this appearance, goddess Durga became known by various names in various parts of the world. I can have the book. I think there's another piece of art here. I'm telling you, spiritual comic book. So many pieces of amazing art. Where are you at? Here it is. There's Durga in an angry mood, chastising a flabbergasted Kamsa. "You stupid jerk." He's actually chastened, we'll hear. After hearing these words, Kamsa became very much overwhelmed by fear. Out of pity, he immediately released Vasudeva and Devaki from the bondage of their shackles and very politely began to address them. "My dear sister and brother-in-law, I have acted just like a demon in killing my own nephews, your children. And thereby I have given up all consideration of our intimate relationship. I do not know what will be the result of these envious acts of mine. Probably I shall be sent to the hell where killers of Brahmanas go. I am surprised, however, that the celestial prophecy has not come true. It is not only in human society that false propaganda is found. Now it appears that even the celestial denizens speak lies. Because I believed in the words of the celestial denizens, I have committed so many sins, like killing the children of my sister." He's not really taking responsibility. "My dear Vasudeva and Devaki, you are both very great souls. I have no instructions to give you, but still I request that you not be sorry for the death of your children. Every one of us is under the control of superior power, and that superior power does not allow us to remain together. We are bound to be separated from our friends and relatives in due course of time. So there's nothing to lament over. Everyone should understand that this material body is different from the spirit soul. And so long as one does not come to the understanding, he is sure to accept the process of transmigration from one body to another. My dear sister Devaki, you were so gentle and kind. Please excuse me. Don't be aggrieved by the death of your children, which I have caused. Actually, this was not done by me, because these are all predestined activities. One has to act according to the predestined plan, even unwillingly. My poor sister Devaki and brother-in-law Vasudev, kindly excuse the atrocities I have committed against you. I am very poor-hearted, and you are so great-hearted. So take compassion upon me and excuse me. While Kamsa was speaking to his brother-in-law and sister, tears flowed from his eyes, and he fell down at their feet. Believing the words of Durga Devi, whom he had tried to kill, Kamsa immediately released his brother-in-law and sister. He personally unlocked the iron shackles, and very sympathetically showed his friendship for his family members. When Devaki saw her brother so repentant, she also became pacified, and forgot all his atrocious activities against her children. Vasudeva also, forgetting all past incidents, spoke smilingly with his brother-in-law. My dear fortunate brother-in-law, what you are saying about the material body and the soul is correct. Every living entity is born ignorant, misunderstanding this material body to be a self. A person influenced like this engages only in enmity only due to the material body. Being engaged in such activities, we forget our eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Vasudeva talked with Kamsa in such an illuminating way, Kamsa became very pleased, and his guilt for killing his nephews subsided. With the permission of his sister Devaki and brother-in-law Vasudeva, he returned to his home with a relieved mind. But the next day, Kamsa called all his counselors together and narrated to them all the incidents that had happened the night before. All the counselors of Kamsa were demons and eternal enemies of the demigods, so they became depressed upon hearing their master speak of the night's events. Although they were not very much experienced or learned, they began to give instructions to Kamsa as follows. Dear sir, let us now make arrangements to kill all children who were born within the last 10 days, in all towns, counties, villages, and pasturing grounds. Let us execute this plan indiscriminately. We think that the demigods cannot do anything against us if we perform these atrocities. Indeed, we have practical experience that whenever you stood to fight with them and began to shower your arrows on them, they immediately fled in all directions just to save their lives. We've also seen many times that you would never kill such surrendered fighters when they were all fearful, their bows, arrows, and chariots broken, forgetful of their military activities and unable to fight with you. So actually, we have nothing to fear from these demigods. They are very proud of being great fighters in peacetime outside the warfield, but actually they cannot show any talent or military power on the warfield. So Durga told him, the child has already been born and is beyond you. And he had a momentary kind of like teachable moment and recognized, he had a momentary glimpse of like reason. And now, because of bad association, he's being convinced, oh, how about this? How about we kill all the kids that were born recently? Who can stop us? Therefore, we have nothing to fear from any of these demigods, but we must not neglect them, for the demigods are our determined enemies. We must be careful to protect ourselves. To root them out from their very existence, we should just engage ourselves in your service and be always ready for your command. If there is some disease in the body which is neglected, it worsens and becomes incurable. Similarly, when one is not careful about restraining the senses and lets them loose, it is very difficult to control them. Therefore, we must now be very careful of the demigods before they get too strong to be subdued. The foundation of the strength of the demigods is Lord Vishnu, because the ultimate goal of all religious principles is to satisfy him. The Vedic injunctions, the Brahmanas, the cows, austerities, sacrifices, performances of charity, and distribution of wealth are all for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. So, let us immediately begin by killing all the Brahmanas who are in charge of the Vedic knowledge, along with the great sages. Let us kill all the cows, which are the source of butter, which is so necessary for performing sacrifices. Please give us your permission to kill all these creatures. Lord Vishnu is situated in everyone's heart and is the leader of all demigods. Therefore, we think that to persecute the great sages and Brahmanas is to kill Lord Vishnu. thus being advised by his demoniac ministers, Kamsa, who is from the very beginning the greatest rascal, decided to persecute the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, being entrapped by the shackles of all-devouring eternal time. He ordered the demons to harass all kinds of saintly persons, and then he entered his house. The adherents of Kamsa were all influenced by the mode of passion as well as illusioned by the mode of ignorance, and their only business was to create enmity with saintly persons. Such activities can only reduce one's duration of life. The demons accelerated the process and invited their deaths as soon as possible. The result of persecuting saintly persons is not only untimely death. The act is so offensive that the perpetrator also gradually loses his beauty, his fame, and his religious principles, and thus his promotion to higher planets is checked. Driven by various kinds of mental concoctions, the demons diminish all kinds of auspiciousness. An offense at the lotus feet of the devotees and brahmanas is a greater offense than that committed at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A civilization that commits such sinful activities generally loses all faith in the Supreme Lord, and such a godless civilization becomes a source of all calamities in human society. End of chapter 4. That's why it's called the atrocities of Kamsa. Any questions or comments? He's a bad man.
I'll make a quick comment, just that last statement that you made. I'm reading a book right now. It's completely unrelated to Shastra, but it's called like Soul Boom, Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution. And the whole theme of it is that a civilization that's creating simple activities and has now taken like everything from your soulmate that's supposed to be God to making it a partner and making money the source of our pleasure rather than love of God. And all of these things that over time have diminished, you know, over Kali Yuga, you know, has become a godless civilization and the source of calamity. And it's like, how do we regain that? And we need a spiritual revolution to actually regain, you know, true happiness. And so I think it's really cool. Like, you know, we're in such a time right now, it's going so bad that like people are picking this up, not just within Krishna consciousness, but people are like, man, all the virtues and everything that we want, humility and empathy, are all spiritual, God-like qualities, but we've taken the God out of it. And therefore, because we've taken God out of it, these qualities aren't like the pinnacle of, you know, what we're trying to do. So I just love that this becomes so relatable, you know, even as we're going through what we're doing as it was when, you know, this was written. So I just think it's super cool.
Yeah, they got to read Krishna book. That'll help them. Send the author the link for this Tuesday evening class.
Well, he quotes the Bhagavad Gita in his book a lot. So yeah, I'll talk to you offline about it. It's cool, but it's but yeah, he brings in Gita, he brings in some other spiritual
devotees have already connected with them then.
Yeah.
Great. Chapter 5. Oh, you had something.
I was just gonna say, it goes to show what bad association
Really
will
does.
do.
Not the first time,
Degrades
not the
it
last
so
time it's going to happen.
quickly.
You know,
He had a realization.
he had a realization and his friends were like, hey, check it out. How about this? Kill all the babies.
And the
Yeah.
cows.
And the cows and the Brahmins. Who can stop you?
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
I guess I'm trying to, it feels like is like the precipice of all of this Kamsa's fear of death. So like,
Yeah,
you're
for him
gonna
it is.
die, this baby's gonna kill you. And it's like, is that what sets him off? Is it his afraid of his own death, or like what it means for his, like what his motives are, or like what
His
it that
motivation
has
is
him-
self-preservation. Yeah, Kamsa's motivation
Yeah.
is, as Prabhupada mentioned in the chapter we just read, maybe something I skipped over. His atrocities were due to misidentifying the body as the self. When you think the body is the self, impending mortality is basically the most terrifying thing, because it implies an end to your existence.
Mhm.
And somebody who is under the wrong modes of nature will do even these kinds of heinous things faced with their own mortality.
Mhm.
And that's Kamsa. That's the role he plays in Leela.
Just a quick note. I was thinking like how the friends and the servants of Kamsa, it's amazing how they, go so far to understand that Lord Vishnu is present in their heart, in everyone's heart, it says here. But then at the same time, they think that they themselves are above that category. They
Right.
can do it, right?
Not the first time that's happened. Kamsa displayed a certain understanding of the universal order. You brought that up. And still he's trying to use it for himself. This is the nature of demons who are educated and have a certain understanding of Dharma, is that they'll twist Dharma. It's like, okay, Vishnu is in the heart of everybody, and all the sacrifices are for him. So what if we stop the sacrifices, then he'll die? Yeah, how about that? Vishnu's in the heart of everybody, but if we take over, we can be actually, like, it's just this way of like artificially usurping the position of God, and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't actually work. But yeah, that's why a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, because it's incomplete knowledge. If they actually understood, like, he's their best friend, he's dwelling in their heart, and they're not exempt from that philosophy. It also applies to them. Then they would have a different attitude. But the point is, they're not actually dedicated to truth. They use whatever truth they find in service of their own egoistic urge. So even scripture, even the Brahminical teachings, whatever the Vedas, they'll just use it in service to their own ego. They don't subjugate the ego to anything greater than itself. That's the problem.
So much like how we see in politics and government, misuse of like the Bible or
Anything,
religious
anything. For
texts.
somebody who's on that level, they'll use anything. God, the law, morality, public opinion, anything. It's all in service to the ego. Chapter 5, the meaning of Nanda and Vasudeva. Although Krishna was the real son of Vasudeva and Devaki, because of Kamsa's atrocious activities, Vasudeva could not enjoy the birth ceremony of his son. But Nanda Maharaj, the foster father, celebrated the birth ceremony of Krishna very joyfully. The next day it was declared that a male child had been born to Yashoda. According to Vedic custom, Nanda Maharaj called for learned astrologers and brahmanas to perform the birth ceremony. The astrologers calculate the moment of the birth and make a horoscope of the child's future life. In the material world, we possess riches and wealth in many ways, but sometimes not in very honest and pious ways, because that is the nature of accumulating wealth. According to Vedic injunction, therefore, one should purify such wealth by giving cows and gold in charity to the Brahmins. A newborn child is also purified by gifts of grains in charity to the Brahmanas. In this material world, it is to be understood that we are always living in a contaminated state. We therefore have to purify the duration of our lives, our possession of wealth, and ourself. We can purify our duration of life by taking a daily bath, and by cleansing the body inside and outside, and accepting the 10 kinds of purificatory processes. By austerities, by worship of the Lord, and by distribution of charity, we can purify the possession of wealth. We can purify ourselves by studying the Vedas, in order to understand the absolute truth and achieve self-realization. In Krishna's birth ceremony, all the assembled Brahmanas began to chant different kinds of Vedic mantras to invoke all good fortune for the child. On this occasion, the joyful vibrations could be heard in all the pasturing grounds and all the houses. Within and outside of the houses, there were varieties of artistic paintings done with rice pulp, and scented water was sprinkled everywhere, even on the roads and streets. Ceilings and roofs were decorated with different kinds of flags, festoons, and green leaves. The gates were made of green leaves and flowers. All the cows, bulls, and calves were smeared with a mixture of oil and turmeric, and painted with minerals like red oxide, yellow clay, and manganese. They wore garlands of peacock feathers and were covered with nice colored cloths and gold necklaces. So this is in Vrindavan now, in Gokula. Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, who, as a context, Prabhupada might describe there, they hadn't had children for a long time. They were elder, and the birth of Krishna is amazing for them. And so Krishna has been transferred, and he's born there, and this is the celebration scene where he's hiding now. He's hiding out in Vrindavan, unknown to Kamsa. When all the ecstatic cowherd men heard that Nanda Maharaj, the father of Krishna, was celebrating the birth ceremony of his son, they became spontaneously joyful. They dressed themselves with very costly garments and ornamented their bodies with different kinds of earrings and necklaces and wore great turbans on their heads. They took various kinds of presentations and thus approached the house of Nanda Maharaj. All the cowherd women became overwhelmed with joy, and they also dressed themselves with various kinds of costly garments and ornaments, and smeared scented cosmetics on their bodies. As the dust on the lotus flower exhibits the exquisite beauty of the flower, all the gopis applied the dust of kumkuma on their lotus-like faces. These beautiful gopis took their different presentations and very soon reached the house of Nanda Maharaj. Overburdened with their heavy hips and swollen breasts, the gopis could not proceed very quickly toward the house of Nanda Maharaj, but out of ecstatic love for Krishna, they proceeded as quickly as possible. Their ears were decorated with pearl rings, their necks with jeweled lockets, their lips and eyes with different kinds of lipstick and ointment, and their hands with nice golden bangles. As they were very hastily passing over the stone road, the flower garlands which were decorating their bodies fell to the ground, and it appeared that a shower of flowers was falling from the sky. From the movement of the different kinds of ornaments on their bodies, they were looking still more beautiful. In this way, they all reached the house of Nanda Yashoda and blessed the child. Dear child, you live long, just to protect us. While they were blessing child Krishna in this way, they offered a mixture of turmeric powder, oil, yogurt, milk, and water. They sprinkled this mixture not only on the body of child Krishna, but on all other persons who were present there. Also on that auspicious occasion, there were different bands of expert musicians playing. When the cowherd men saw the pastimes of the cowherd women, they became very joyful. And in response, they also began to throw yogurt, milk, clarified butter, and water upon the bodies of the gopis. Then both parties began to throw butter on each other's bodies. Nanda Maharaj was also very happy to see the pastimes of the cowherd men and women, and he became very liberal in giving charity to the different singers who were assembled there. It is very important to note in this connection how wealthy the inhabitants of Vrindavana were simply by raising cows. All the cowherd men belonged to the Vaishya community, and their business was to protect cows and cultivate crops. By their dress and ornaments and by their behavior, it appears that, although they were in a small village, they still were rich in material possessions. They possessed such an abundance of various kinds of milk products that they were throwing butter lavishly on each other's bodies without restriction. Their wealth was in milk, yogurt, clarified butter, and many other milk products. And by trading their agricultural products, they were rich in various kinds of jewelry, ornaments, and costly garments. Not only did they possess all these things, but they could give them away in charity lavishly, as Nanda Maharaj did, as did Nanda Maharaj. While Nanda Maharaj was worshipping Lord Vishnu on this occasion, and was trying to satisfy all the people there, his only desire was that the newborn child Krishna would be happy. Nanda Maharaj had no knowledge that his child was the origin of Vishnu. He was praying to Lord Vishnu to protect him. Rohini Devi, the mother of Balaram, was the most fortunate wife of Vasudeva. She's one of Vasudev's other wives. This is a previous age when men could be qualified to have more than one wife. So as Prabhupada is going to say, she was away from her husband. Yet just to congratulate Maharaj Nanda on the occasion of the birth ceremony of his son, Krishna, she dressed herself very nicely. So Balaram has already appeared. If you remember, Devaki gave birth to 6 daughters, Kamsa killed all of them. She became pregnant with a 7th. Krishna told Yogamaya, transfer them from Devaki's womb to Rohini's womb, and then I will go into Devaki's womb. So when that happened, it appeared that Devaki had a miscarriage. That's what it looked like, because the pregnancy ended. But actually, the pregnancy was transferred to Rohini in Vrindavan. She gave birth to Balaram. Balaram is born before Krishna. Balaram is Krishna's therefore elder brother. So she's there in Vrindavan, Rohini. So is Balaram. With Nanda and Yashoda, but Vasudeva and Devaki are back in Mathura. And they know that Krishna has been sent away.
Can you remind me real quick, Subhadra, like their sister, where does she appear into the mix?
Later.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was later. Don't even have to, I just couldn't remember where she falls in all this.
Stay tuned. She's in here.
Family tree.
A few, yeah, we do need one of those genealogy tables. From the opulence of the birth ceremony of Krishna, it was very clear that at that time Vrindavana was rich in every respect. Because Lord Krishna took birth in the house of King Nanda and Mother Yashoda, the goddess of fortune was obliged to manifest her opulences in Vrindavana. It appeared that Vrindavana had already become a site for the pastimes of the goddess of fortune. After the birth ceremony, Nanda Maharaj decided to go to Mathura to pay the annual tax to the government of Kamsa. Before leaving, he called for the able cowherd men of the village and asked them to take care of Vrindavan in his absence. When Nanda Maharaj arrived in Mathura, Vasudeva got the news and was very eager to congratulate his friend. When Nanda saw Vasudeva, he felt that he had regained his life. Nanda, overwhelmed with joy, immediately stood up and embraced Vasudeva. Vasudeva was received very warmly and offered a nice place to sit. Anxious about his two sons who had been put under the protection of Nanda without Nanda's knowledge, Vasudeva inquired about them with great anxiety. Both Balarama and Krishna were the sons of Vasudeva. Balarama was transferred to the womb of Rohini, Vasudeva's own wife, but Rohini was kept under the protection of Nanda Maharaj. Krishna was personally delivered to Yashoda and exchanged for her daughter. Nanda Maharaj knew that Balaram was the son of Vasudeva, but he did not know that Krishna was also Vasudeva's son. Vasudeva, of course, was aware of this fact and inquired very eagerly about both Krishna and Balaram. Vasudeva then addressed Nanda, "My dear brother, you were old and very anxious to beget a son, and yet you had none. Now, by the grace of the Lord, you are fortunate to have a very nice son. I think that this incident is very auspicious for you. Dear friend, I was imprisoned by Kamsa and now I am released. Therefore, this is another birth for me. I had no hope of seeing you again, but by God's grace, I can see you." In this way, Vasudeva indirectly expressed his anxiety about Krishna. Krishna was sent incognito to the bed of Mother Yashoda, and after Nanda very pompously celebrated Krishna's birth ceremony, he went to Mathura. He meant Krishna, Nanda. So Vasudeva was very much pleased and said, "This is a new birth for me." He never expected that Krishna would live because all his other sons had been killed by Kamsa. Vasudeva continued, "My dear friend, it is very difficult for us to live together. Although we have our family and relatives, sons and daughters, by nature's way we are generally separated from one another. According to one's fruitive activities, one has to act differently and thereby be separated. For example, many plants and creepers are floating on the waves of the ocean. Sometimes they come together, and sometimes they separate forever. One plant goes one way, and another plant goes another. Similarly, our family assembly may be very nice while we're living together, but after some time, in the course of the waves of time, we are separated. The purport of this expression by Vasudeva is this: although he had 8 sons born in the womb of Devaki, unfortunately they were all gone. He could not even keep his one son, Krishna, with him. Vasudeva was feeling his separation, but he could not express the real fact. Please tell me about the welfare of Vrindavan. You have many animals. Are they happy? Are they getting sufficient grass and water? Please also let me know whether the place where you are now living is undisturbed and peaceful." This inquiry was made by Vasudeva because he was very anxious about Krishna's safety. He knew that Kamsa and his followers were trying to kill Krishna by sending various kinds of demons. They had already resolved that all children born within 10 days of the birthday of Krishna should be killed. Because Vasudeva was so anxious about Krishna, he inquired about the safety of his residents. He also inquired about Balaram and his mother Rohini. Vasudeva also reminded Nanda Maharaj that Balarama did not know his real father. He knows you as his father, and now you have another child, Krishna, and I think you are taking very nice care of both of them. It is also significant that Vasudeva inquired about the welfare of Nanda Maharaj's animals. The animals, and especially the cows, were protected exactly in the manner of one's children. Vasudeva was a Kshatriya, and Nanda Maharaj was a Vaishya. It is the duty of the Kshatriyas to give protection to the citizens, and it is the duty of the Vaishyas to give protection to the cows. The cows are as important as the citizens. Just as the human citizens should be given all kinds of protection, so the cows also should be given full protection. Vasudeva continued to say that the maintenance of religious principles, economic development, and the satisfactory execution of meeting the demands of the senses depend on cooperation among relatives, nations, and all humanity. Therefore, it is everyone's duty to see that his fellow citizens and the cows are not put into difficulty. One should see to the peace and comfort of his fellow man and the animals. The development of religious principles, economic development, and sense gratification can then be achieved without difficulty. Nanda Maharaj replied, "My dear Vasudeva, I know that you are very much aggrieved because the cruel king Kamsa has killed all your sons born of Devaki. Although the last child was a daughter, Kamsa could not kill her, and she has entered into the celestial planets because she floated up into the sky while telling him off. My dear friend, do not be aggrieved. We are all being controlled by our past unseen activities. Everyone is subjected to his past deeds, and one who is conversant with the philosophy of karma and its reactions is a man in knowledge. Such a person will not be aggrieved at any incident, happy or miserable. Vasudev then replied, my dear Nanda, if you have already paid the government taxes, then return soon to your place, because I think that there may be some disturbances in Gokula. Gokula is an area of Vrindavan. After the friendly conversation between Nanda and Vasudev, Vasudev returned to his home. Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men who had come to Mathura to pay their taxes also returned home. Chapter 5. Next week we'll have the first demon. Yeah, we won't. I'm a liar. Next reading we'll have the first demon that Krishna killed, Putana. And on a really nice suggestion from Kishori, I'm going to insert maybe some philosophy on these demons, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave us some insight that in Krishna's pastimes, all the demons he kills in Vrindavana indicate certain anarthas, specific qualities of illusion, different misunderstandings or attachments. And Krishna's killing each one of them indicates the destruction of that particular anartha. And therefore, reading each one offers a particular kind of purification. We'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. But for now, we'll just take any comments, questions, reflections before we end. It's practically 8 o'clock. We could really go all night just reading this. I'm saying we could, like we could do it and it would feel great, but we can't.
Yeah, this is just, it's so wonderful how you're going through it. And, you know, when you're reading it, I'm following along as best I can in the book and just seeing the movie play in my mind. And this, you know, it isn't all that academic of a thought, but first I thought when they were doing the birth ceremony, what about the monkeys? Where are all the monkeys? Having been in Vrindavan, like everybody else was decorated. Where are the monkeys? And then,
Yeah.
you know, a little transcendental food fight. You know, it's just I don't know, it made me laugh. It's just it's
It's
amazing.
very joyful. The monkeys haven't made their appearance yet. Here's a painting of the birth ceremony. There's little baby Krishna just running the show. There's Nanda. Yashoda's behind him, I guess. The Brahmanas are being offered different things. There's a whole village. And yeah, they're having a transcendental food fight out of joy. Just throwing ghee at each other. We'll see the monkeys in short order, like 2 chapters from now.
Is there a message on it?
Is there a
I love
message?
how
Yes.
it's also highlighted how all the wealth of the residents of Vrindavan comes from caring for the cows. Raising
Yeah.
cows.
Their lifestyle is so natural, and it's so pleasing to the heart to hear about what an intact social structure, and they're so healthy and happy. You know, this is real life. They're taking care of cows. They have crops. They can trade away the excess from their the cow protection for whatever else they need, and they were doing just fine. Vrindavan was
Yeah, they're wearing bangles,
jewelry,
gold jewelry.
pearl rings in their ear. Yeah. Eileen says, retaining it is so much better with you reading with us. Hare Krishna. Yeah, it feels like gathering around a campfire and having story time. Glories to Srila Prabhupada for giving us the Krishna book. Now you can see why brahmacharis and brahmacharinis, you know, all the little renunciates in the ashrams from the beginning of this society in the West, have been reading the Krishna book at night before going to bed. It's very sweet. You go to bed, Prabhupada said you go to bed dreaming of Krishna. It works. You can try this, by the way. Like, you know, Kishori and I have been reading Krishna book together for 2 years now, every night. We just do. It's just a thing we do. Even if it's just like a minute long. When I was in Vrindavan, we still did it. We found a time where I was awake and she's awake, and I would call on WhatsApp and we would read Krishna book. So I highly recommend reading Krishna book every day. I've been doing it. Before I met you, I read Krishna book every day for some time. And that's why it's the book I've read more of than any other book. And it's just, it's ecstatic, you know. And there are so many little details in Krishna book. I have a devotee friend who created like a quiz game based on the little details. And it's nerdy and fun. And it's also just like totally transcendent. There's so many names. Like, what are Krishna's four horses? What are their colors? What do they look like? That's in chapter like 88 or something.
Future Song Gathering Games.
So read the Krishna book every night. And if you do that, we'll be connected even when this Tuesday night reading is not happening. Don't worry about reading ahead. It's totally fine. I promise you, you won't get bored when you come back and we pick up where we're at. Like, no loss. Yeah.
Yeah. Our next class back will be on February 25th.
February 25th. Okay.
That's over a month. Yeah.
So any other reflections or comments or questions before we?
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe we can have that, Krishna trivia quiz after maybe 6 chapters to hours.
Yeah, we can even informally,
Yeah.
like, I could probably think of some questions.
Yeah. Pop quiz.
Pop quiz, hot shot. How many arms did Durga manifest when she chastised?
4.
8.
Oh,
Was it 8? Is 8 or 6? Was it 8?
oh, Krishna came before.
Yeah.
The Vishnu. Yeah.
Yeah.
8.
How many children were murdered by Kamsa before Balaram took
Six.
pregnant? 6.
Balaram was the 7th.
Balaram was the 7th. Yeah, 6. What's the name of a heavenly angelic being? What's the race called? The Apsaras. Yeah, the heavenly damsels, the Apsaras. Unlimited details. Mel, did you have something?
Yeah. I was just thinking pretty deeply about the role of Devaki and Vyasadeva. Vasudev.
Vasudev.
That's it, yeah. And that's a part of this story that I think is like really worth spending some time meditating on for myself. And I've thought a lot about Devaki over the years and really thinking about that. And a lot of times we don't understand what our roles are meant to be in this life, in many ways. And to think about them and this situation that they're in, where they're giving this birth to this child that is the supreme, like God, sorry, Eleanor's gonna come, the supreme personality of Godhead. And what that separation must feel like, like any parent of us, any one of us who are parents, and when our children have to leave, or many times people describe when their children are old enough and they leave the house. And for me, when I went through separation for the first time and had many 3 days without my child with me, how heart-wrenching and terrible that is. And you think about these incredible beings who brought Krishna into this world in that way, and their role in that, and to like really spend time meditating about how we don't fully understand the nature of the roles that we're intended in this life. It's beyond us, and it's extremely spiritual and transcendental. And we all have this, we're not at that level, obviously, but there's qualities in that we can be grateful for and see.
And also of note is that they asked for it. They had aspired very, very diligently to be Krishna's parents. He said in previous birth, you wanted this, you wanted to be my parent. And you served me with such faith and dedication that I'm giving you this opportunity. So the anxiety we're feeling, like if it becomes in relationship to Krishna, it becomes a spiritual thing. Like, to be separated from your child is torment for a parent. But the constant meditation on the Lord that Devaki has, or I mean, like, because Krishna leaves Vrindavan, what happens to Nanda and Yashoda, right? What kind of separation they have, or when Lord Chaitanya leaves Shachi, how she's thinking about him constantly. This is like,
Or even how the gopis feel.
right,
when
it's
they-
divine separation.
Mhm.
So, yeah, there's a lot in this Leela. In these Leelas, there's a lot of spiritual emotion, and I appreciate, pausing and pointing out Devaki and Vasudev, because he's born, and then they're like, she's like, oh, you should really go. It's not safe here. I'd love for you to stay, but Kamsa's going to kill you. Please protect yourself. And then he's gone.
And not only once, but also with Balaram
Yeah.
twice. And what to speak of the other children that were killed that they had.
Hare Krishna. Anything else?
I just had a question. It's a little, small nuance there. It says that, Nanda Maharaj knew about the fact that Balaram was Rohini's son. So
Hmm.
was that revealed to him, by by Vasudev? Because they couldn't have been together, right? Because they were imprisoned all the while. I mean,
I don't. Your question is, how did he know that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know, because Kamsa had imprisoned Vasudev. There was no direct contact. In fact, Vasudev said, "I didn't think I was going to ever see you again. This is like taking birth again. I feel like I'm reborn because I thought I would like rot in that prison." So I don't know how he knew. Is it that some message was transferred? Like we know why Balaram is the son, because he was transferred on the order of Krishna. And we know that Rohini is Vasudev's wife. Was it that Rohini became pregnant with Balaram before she was in Vrindavan? I don't remember. I would have to look into the writings of the Acharyas. We know that Rohini is in Vrindavan to protect her, because Kamsa is a tyrant in Mathura. So she's safely away. Although she's married to Vasudev, she's over in Vrindavan because it's just safer. So maybe there was at some point she went there. I can look into it, perhaps. Just remind me. Maybe I'll find what the acharyas have to say. Okay. We'll press pause on the Krishna book here. Although not really, because you can really all just read it I know you're all just gonna read it every night, right?
Mhm.
So please reflect in the WhatsApp group as you're reading Krishna book, as you're hearing Krishna Katha, Leela. Reflect back what's happening for you, what you like, what stands out. I can't promise we'll reply, but we do get WhatsApp messages even in India.
Yeah.
And you'll all get each other's messages, and the Krishna book will keep going in that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Krishna book 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Devaki and Vasudev Nandan and Yashoda ki jai. Vancha kalpaturubhyas cha kripasturubhyev cha paditanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Baby Krishna crossing the Yamuna ki jai. Check out those pieces of art though. I mean, I'm telling you, something else.
Haribol, everybody. Good night. Thank you for being here. We'll see you soon. You're welcome, Samantha. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare